Good evening. Our scripture will be coming from Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 through 11, and it reads, "The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. 'My lords,' he said, 'please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night, and then go on your way early in the morning.' 'No,' they answered, 'we will spend the night in the square.' But he insisted so strongly that they did not go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, 'Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them.' Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, 'No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have two daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof.' 'Get out of our way,' they replied. 'This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them.' They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. But the men inside reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door, and they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness, so they could not find the door." If you grew up in or around the black church, you will hear this scripture oftentimes in order to condemn homosexuality. But when you really look at the totality of this passage of scripture and you apply context to the content, what you will really find is that this passage of scripture is not about homosexuality. Furthermore, what you'll find is that this passage of scripture does not indicate God's disdain for homosexuality. But what you'll find is that this scripture really highlights God's disdain for a lack of hospitality. The argument within this scripture is homosexuality versus hospitality. What we'll find, and what we do find oftentimes, is that the Bible, although people try to pick and choose these scriptures and passages, regardless of how you may feel, the Bible is not clear in homosexuality. But what it is clear in is hospitality. We see this in Leviticus 19:33-34. "When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God." So when we see the Lord coming to Lot, are coming to Abraham in previous chapters, saying that he was going to destroy Sodom, and Abraham pleading with God, saying, "If you can just find 100, or if you can just find 10, going all the way down to just if you can find one person who was worthy enough in Sodom, you won't destroy the city," and God obliges. The focus on, again, is the hospitality. We see Lot display this at the very beginning. The two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them. He greeted them, bowed down with his face to the ground. He showed a sign of respect. He said, "My lords, please turn aside to your servant's house." He offered them somewhere to stay. "You can wash your feet and spend the night, and then go on your way early in the morning." And initially they answered no, but the Bible declares that Lot insisted, and they came to his house. He fed them, he gave them a place to sleep, and he gave them a place to wash. And so what we find here is that these people, these Sodomites come, the men of Sodom come right behind him and undo all of the hospitality that Lot had just laid out. And what we see in Ezekiel 16:49 is, again, the highlight of the lack of hospitality. "Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and your daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy." Right? They did not treat their visitors as themselves. They did not show them love and affection. Now, there is an argument to be made that they did this through the lack of hospitality. They showed this through sexual immorality, but the highlight isn't necessarily just homosexuality for their lack of hospitality. It's the general argument should be about the totality of the sexual immorality. And the sexual immorality would be any form of sex outside of the confines of marriage, which God ordained earlier in Genesis, right? So the sexual immortality is not a singular focus on homosexuality, but instead, the sexual immortality is a general focus on the lack of hospitality, but sexual immorality as a totality.